You followed the rules, you did the no contact thing, you stepped away, ignored their messages, resisted the urge to check their social media, and played the game of silence. But here's the problem: you're still waiting, waiting for them to realize what they lost, waiting for the regret to kick in, waiting for that text that never seems to come. But what if I told you that no contact alone isn't the magic solution? What if I told you that being absent isn't always enough? Some people don't chase what disappears, they only crave what makes them feel something. And if you've been nothing but silent, they might not be feeling anything at all. See, most people think detachment means cutting off communication and hoping the silence makes them miss you. But silence without emotional contrast is just silence. And if someone isn't already attached to you in a deep way, they won't feel your absence. They'll just get used to it. So here's where we shift the game. Instead of fading into the background, you become unpredictable. Instead of being gone, you become an intriguing presence, one that subtly disrupts their comfort, challenges their assumptions, and forces them to reconsider everything they thought they knew about you. People only truly feel loss when there's an emotional contrast. If they've grown used to your silence, they won't be shaken by it. But if you shift your energy, become someone who is suddenly thriving, engaging, and subtly unbothered, it triggers something powerful in their psychology. Think about this. When you disappear entirely, they assume you're waiting. But when they see you laughing in a new social setting, glowing with confidence, or engaging with people they don't recognize, it forces a new narrative in their mind, one where they are no longer part of your world. And that's the moment they start to wonder. Humans are drawn to mystery. If someone can predict your next move, they stop paying attention. But if your energy becomes unreadable, if you suddenly show up in unexpected ways, maybe through a casual yet powerful interaction, or even just a subtle shift in your online presence, you disrupt their sense of security. They thought they had you figured out. Now they don't. And that uncertainty is what creates emotional engagement, because nothing is more unsettling than realizing someone you thought you had power over is suddenly out of reach. Here's the uncomfortable truth. People value what they can't fully have. The moment they sense you've stopped waiting, stopped hoping, stopped caring, that's when the real power shift happens. Not when you say you've moved on, but when you embody it. When they see that you've built a life they are no longer essential to. When your energy screams, I'm better, I'm growing, and I'm not looking back. That's when they start questioning themselves. That's when they begin to wonder if they made a mistake. The irony of all of this: the moment you genuinely stop waiting for them to come back is usually the moment they do. But by then, something remarkable has happened. You've outgrown the need for their validation. You've created a version of yourself that they have to work for rather than the other way around. And that's the real power. So if no contact didn't work, don't just disappear. Elevate. Don't just avoid them. Transform. Become the person they never expected you to be. Because when you do, you won't have to chase them. No contact is often praised as the ultimate solution to getting someone's attention after a breakup or a falling out. The logic seems simple. If you disappear from their life, they'll realize what they lost, feel the weight of your absence, and come running back. But in reality, it's not always that straightforward. Disappearing alone doesn't guarantee a reaction, because absence in itself isn't always enough to create emotional urgency. People don't always chase what's missing. Instead, they respond to what triggers them emotionally. If your absence doesn't create a meaningful emotional shift in their mind, they won't feel compelled to act on it. Some people process silence as relief rather than loss. Others assume it means you've accepted the separation and moved on, which removes any pressure for them to reconsider their actions. And some simply don't register the absence at all because their attention is focused elsewhere. Think about it. If someone isn't deeply invested in you at the time of your departure, your disappearance won't shake their world. It will just blend into the background of their daily life. It's only when absence is paired with emotional contrast that it creates an impact. If, before you walked away, you were pouring energy into them, making yourself available, or even subtly seeking their validation, then suddenly vanishing might cause a shift in their perception. But if they had already detached, then your silence becomes just another quiet moment in their life. Another key factor is how people experience loss. Loss isn't just about missing someone. It's about feeling the weight of their absence in a way that disrupts one's emotional balance. If no contact isn't making them feel something significant, then it's not achieving its intended purpose. Some people don't feel loss immediately. They feel it when they start encountering situations where they used to have you and now they don't. But if their life continues without much disruption, if nothing reminds them of your presence, then the absence doesn't register as deeply as you might hope. Moreover, no contact works best when there was already a foundation of attachment. If someone had strong emotions toward you, whether positive or even conflicted, then your absence may trigger reflection, curiosity, or even regret. But if they were already emotionally disengaged, then stepping away doesn't necessarily create a desire to reconnect. It might just reinforce their existing detachment. This is where emotional triggers come into play. Humans are emotional creatures, and we react to changes in patterns, unpredictability, and contrast. If you are always available and suddenly disappear, that creates a shift they might notice. But if they already expected you to fade away, then your absence won't spark any significant emotional reaction. That's why just cutting contact isn't enough. It has to be combined with a psychological shift that disrupts their perception of you and forces them to see you in a different light. For some, no contact becomes a passive waiting game. They assume that by stepping back, the other person will eventually feel the void and come back. But time alone doesn't create desire. It's not the absence itself that makes someone want you back. It's the contrast between what they had and what they think they lost. If someone believes they can return to you at any time, then your absence isn't a loss, it's just a pause. It's just a pause. But if they start to sense that they no longer have access to you in the way they once did, if they see you evolving, thriving, and shifting into a different energy, that's when they begin to feel the loss in a real way. When someone has taken your absence for granted, it means they've placed you in a predictable category in their mind, one that doesn't challenge them, doesn't surprise them, and most importantly, doesn't evoke a strong emotional response. They assume they know what you're doing, how you're feeling, and what role you still play in their life, even if that role is simply someone they believe they can return to whenever they please. This is where emotional contrast becomes the most powerful tool at your disposal. See, human psychology is wired to respond to change. When something remains the same for too long, the brain registers it as background noise. It doesn't demand attention and it doesn't create urgency. But the moment something shifts, when an expected pattern suddenly breaks, the brain has no choice but to sit up and take notice. This is why mere absence isn't always enough. If they've already categorized you as a goner or eating in the wings, your silence is predictable, and predictable things don't evoke an emotional response. To truly shift the dynamic, you have to become unpredictable, mysterious, and subtly influential. This doesn't mean playing games or manipulating emotions. It means stepping out of the version of yourself they think they know and embodying something they can no longer easily define. Unpredictability is key because it forces them to reconsider everything they assumed about you. When they can no longer predict how you will respond, where you will be, or what you will do next, they are forced to pay attention. Maybe they expected you to be mourning them, posting sad quotes, or staying off the radar, but instead they see you glowing, engaging with new people, and exuding an energy that doesn't seek their validation. Suddenly, the script in their mind shifts. They wonder, wait, was I wrong about them? Are they actually moving on? This thought alone creates emotional tension, and tension is what brings people back into focus. Mystery is equally powerful. When someone believes they have complete access to your emotions, they feel no need to question or chase. But when they start seeing glimpses of you that don't fully add up, new confidence, unexpected activities, subtle but intriguing changes in how you carry yourself, it creates an irresistible need to figure you out again. The key is not to broadcast everything, but to let just enough slip through that they are left with questions. Humans chase answers, especially when those answers relate to something or someone they thought they had figured out. Then comes subtle influence. Influence isn't about direct action. It's about planting seeds in their subconscious. This could be as simple as making a small but noticeable change in your appearance, engaging in something they never expected you to, or even carrying yourself with a level of self-assurance that suggests you've tapped into something bigger than them. Influence happens when they start noticing these changes without you ever directly telling them. Think about how powerful contrast is in storytelling. A plot twist works because it breaks the expected pattern. A movie is compelling because it takes the viewer on a journey of highs and lows, not because it stays at the same emotional level throughout. People react to relationships the same way. If they thought they had you figured out and suddenly the energy around you shifts, they can't help but notice. This is how you make someone feel the weight of your absence, not by just disappearing, but by creating a contrast between the version of you they remember and the version of you that now exists. Because once they start seeing you differently, they start feeling differently. And once they start feeling differently, the dynamic between you is no longer in their control. When people go no contact, the assumption is that silence alone will create longing. But in reality, complete avoidance often leads to being forgotten rather than missed. The mind doesn't dwell on things that feel permanently out of reach. It fixates on things that create curiosity, uncertainty, and emotional tension. If your absence has become predictable, then it's time to shift from avoidance to intrigue. A subtle but powerful shift that keeps you in their subconscious without chasing their attention. Intrigue isn't about manipulation, it's about disrupting expectations. When they assume you'll stay away, they stop checking. When they believe you've moved on in a predictable way, they stop wondering. But when something shifts, something small yet unexpected, they feel an emotional nudge, even if they don't fully understand why. A well-placed social media move is one of the simplest and most effective ways to create this effect. It's not about posting something desperate or overly polished. It's about subtlety. A picture that hints at a new experience, an unexpected interaction with someone intriguing, a post that carries confidence and depth without trying too hard. The goal isn't to signal a look at me, I'm doing great. That's too obvious. The goal is to make them pause and wonder. Wait, but what's this about? Why? Who are they with? What's changed social media is powerful because it allows you to create an emotional ripple effect without direct contact. Maybe you always posted a certain way when they were around. Suddenly, you're different. Maybe you used to engage in specific conversations and now you've shifted. Maybe you appear in a setting they didn't expect. The key is contrast subtle but noticeable changes that make them question the version of you they had in their mind. Beyond social media, an energy shift is one of the most powerful ways to create intrigue. Energy is something people pick up on even from a distance. If you were once anxious, seeking their validation, or overly available, and now you carry yourself differently, more grounded, more focused, more unbothered, it changes how they perceive you. They may not consciously register it, but they feel it. This shift in energy can happen through your presence in shared spaces, mutual connections, or even just the way you respond or don't respond if they reach out. You don't have to be rude. You don't have to be cold, but you can be detached in a way that makes them wonder. Wonder. If they expected you to be bitter and instead you're indifferent, that's intriguing. If they assumed you'd try to reconnect and instead you're thriving in your own world, that creates tension. And then, of course, there's the power of a surprising interaction. Maybe you run into them unexpectedly. Maybe they hear something about you from a mutual friend. Maybe they see a shift in how others respond to you. The goal isn't to manufacture these moments, but to become someone worth noticing, someone who carries an energy that makes others take interest. Because when other people start seeing you in a new light, it's only a matter of time before they do too. What makes this shift from avoidance to intrigue so powerful is that it keeps them emotionally engaged without direct effort on your part. It's not about chasing them, forcing a reaction, or proving anything. It's about planting questions in their mind. People aren't drawn to what's predictable. They're drawn to what feels just out of reach. When you stop trying to remove yourself completely and instead create a presence that lingers in their thoughts, one they can't quite shake, one that makes them wonder, that's when they start to feel something they didn't expect. And when they feel something, they start to pay attention. People don't chase what they believe is guaranteed. They don't fear losing something they assume will always be within reach. If someone has taken you for granted, it's because in their mind you are an option, not a necessity. They assume that, no matter what, you'll be there if they ever change their mind. But what happens when that assumption gets shattered? When the version of you they thought they knew evolves into something untouchable, unexpected, and undeniably magnetic? That's when their loss instinct is triggered. and suddenly they start to feel something they never expected: regret. The loss instinct is hardwired into human psychology. People often don't realize the value of something until they sense it slipping through their fingers. But for them to truly feel that loss, they need to see a version of you that is not waiting, not hoping, and certainly not accessible in the way they once assumed. This doesn't mean pretending to be over them or forcing yourself into something fake. It means growing into a version of yourself that commands their attention simply by existing. Growth is the ultimate disruptor. When someone sees you exactly as they left you, they feel no urgency. But when they notice a shift, when they see that you are leveling up in ways they didn't anticipate, it creates an emotional jolt. The things that once defined you are no longer there. The insecurities, the over-explaining, the waiting around, they've been replaced with confidence, excitement, and a life that moves forward with or without them. Growth is not about proving anything to them. It's about shifting your own focus. It's about finally doing the things you put off. It's about stepping into the version of yourself you always knew you could be. The irony, the moment you stop trying to make them see your worth, is the moment they actually start to see it. Because when someone watches you thrive without them, it forces them to reevaluate what they lost. Then comes success, another powerful trigger for the loss instinct. Success doesn't have to mean money or fame. It means showing up as someone who is truly in their element. It means walking into a room with a presence that turns heads. It means pursuing your passions, attracting new energy, and radiating a self-assurance that says, I don't need validation. I am already complete. And that's where the untouchable aura comes in. When someone feels like they can return to you at any moment, they don't feel urgency. But when they start to question whether they even have access to you anymore, their mind spirals. They wonder, would they even want me now? Am I even on their radar? This aura isn't about coldness, it's about elevation. You aren't cutting them off, you're rising so high that they don't even know how to reach you anymore. You aren't bitter, you're simply too focused on your own momentum to dwell on the past. And that shift is what creates emotional discomfort in them. People feel lost the moment they realize they can't just walk back into your life like nothing happened. They feel lost when they see you happy, thriving, and moving forward in a way they never expected. They feel lost when they realize that you've become something they no longer have control over. And in that moment, their perspective shifts. They don't just think about you, they start feeling your absence in a way they never did before. And once they feel that loss, that's when they start to question everything. The moment you stop waiting is the moment the power dynamic shifts. When someone assumes they hold all the power, that they can come and go as they please, that your emotions revolve around their actions, they feel no urgency, no real loss. But the second they sense that you've truly moved forward, something shifts inside them. They start questioning, doubting, and most importantly, feeling. Power in relationships isn't about control, it's about emotional leverage. When your world once revolved around them, whether through waiting, hoping, or overanalyzing, they felt secure. Even if they weren't actively in your life, they knew they could return if they wanted to. There was no mystery, no urgency. But when that silent assurance disappears, it creates a void, one that their mind can't ignore. Suddenly, you're no longer predictable. You're no longer in the same emotional place where they left you. They expected you to wait, to linger in the background, but instead, you've become someone in motion, someone who is experiencing, growing, and engaging with life in ways that don't include them. And that realization disturbs them. Here's the key. It's not about making them think you've moved on. It's about actually moving on. Not in a forced way, not as a performance, but as a genuine shift in your focus. The second you stop living in reaction to them, they lose the emotional power they once had. This shift can be subtle, but it's deeply felt. Maybe it's a new routine, a change in the way you carry yourself, or a shift in the people you engage with. Maybe it's a quiet confidence they didn't expect, an energy that no longer seeks their approval. Maybe it's the way you don't react when they try to test the waters. When someone reaches out expecting the old dynamic and instead finds a version of you that is emotionally distant and unaffected, it throws them off balance. If they thought a simple message would reel you back in, but instead they're met with polite indifference, they start wondering, wait, did I misjudge this? Are they really over me? And that's when curiosity starts working against them. They begin looking for signs. Signs that you still care, signs that you still feel something. If they see none, their mind spirals. They start replaying past moments, trying to understand where the shift happened. And the worst part for them, they no longer feel in control of the narrative. Regret creeps in when someone realizes they may have underestimated what they had. When they sense they are no longer the center of your emotional world, they start questioning whether they ever were as important as they thought. They wonder if they misread the situation. They start seeing you through a different lens, one that magnifies your value rather than diminishing it. And all of this happens without you doing anything drastic. You didn't beg, you didn't chase, you didn't force them to see your worth. You simply took your focus off them and placed it back where it always should have been, on yourself. And in that shift, the power dynamic reverses, because now they are the ones feeling unsteady. They are the ones analyzing your every move. They are the ones questioning whether they lost something they can never get back. And that's when they finally start to feel the loss that you once carried alone. The most powerful shift you can make isn't about them, it's about you. When you stop focusing on whether they'll come back, when you genuinely detach from the outcome, that's when everything changes. Not just in your relationship with them, but in your relationship with yourself. Because here's the truth, people are drawn to those who don't need them. When someone senses that your happiness, confidence, and sense of self-worth are not dependent on their actions, it creates a gravitational pull. It makes them wonder, why aren't they affected? Why aren't they chasing? What changed? But this shift can't be faked. You can't just pretend you don't care while secretly hoping they'll notice. That's just another form of waiting. The real shift happens when you truly internalize the idea that your life is bigger than this one person, that your happiness isn't tied to their presence, and that you are always whole on your own. This kind of mindset mastery isn't about playing games, it's about reclaiming your personal power. Think about how much energy you've spent analyzing, overthinking, or trying to understand them. Yeah. Now imagine what would happen if all that energy was redirected back into your own growth, your own joy, and your own fulfillment. The result? You become magnetic. Not because you're trying to be, but because confidence, self-sufficiency, and emotional security are naturally attractive. When you walk into a room radiating self-assurance, people feel it. When you pursue your goals with purpose and excitement, people notice. And when you no longer look over your shoulder, waiting for them to return, that's when they start looking over theirs, wondering what's changed. This shift is subtle, yet profound. It's in the way you carry yourself, the way you speak, the way you move through the world. You stop looking for validation. You stop seeking closure. You stop replaying old conversations, hoping for a different outcome. Instead, you accept that you are the prize, and if they don't see it, that's their loss, not yours. And something fascinating happens when you adopt this mindset. People who once took you for granted suddenly start craving your attention, not because you manipulated them, not because you played some elaborate strategy, but because confidence, certainty, and emotional independence create a powerful contrast to the neediness and insecurity they may be used to. They start seeing you differently. They start questioning their decisions. And most of all, they start feeling the void that your absence creates. But here's the best part. By the time they realize what they lost, you might not even care anymore. Because the deeper you step into this mindset, the more you realize that your happiness was never supposed to be in someone else's hands to begin with. You don't need their validation. You don't need their attention. You don't need them to feel whole. And when you truly understand that, something incredible happens. You become the one who gets to decide. Whether they come back or not no longer matters, because your focus is no longer on convincing someone to see your worth. It's on becoming so undeniably radiant, so deeply fulfilled, that the only people who get access to you are those who genuinely deserve it. The greatest transformation you can make isn't about getting them back, it's about getting yourself back. When you master your own mindset, you step into a version of yourself that is no longer defined by who stays or who leaves. You stop chasing, stop waiting, and start living. And in that process, you become the kind of person who naturally commands respect, admiration, and even desire without having to ask for it. Because true power isn't in trying to control someone else's actions. It's in becoming so fulfilled, so self-assured that their presence or absence no longer dictates your happiness. And the irony, That's exactly when they start feeling your absence the most. That's when they start questioning, regretting, and wondering if they made the wrong choice. But by then, the real question is, will you still care? Because by the time they come back, you might have already outgrown the version of yourself that ever needed them in the first place.